What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Copy Podcast and Pint and Pint episode 26. We are in the Monro, this time on Duke Street. We're usually on the Guinness, but it's a bit hot out there, isn't it, Neil? So
very warm.
I asked you what you fancied, and it was a Swift, no Guinness. Get me a lager.
Yes, and this is where we ended up. It's very, very, very hot in the city of Liverpool right now.
It is very, very, very. So we've got Amstel, as you can see there.
Yep.
But yeah, more drinks are available if you fancy it. Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a weird one because I haven't done one of these for a week or so now, because obviously the news. But
we were meant to do it together last week.
We were meant to, yeah. Prior to the news. But yeah, it's been 8 days since, of course, Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva were involved in the horrendous scenes that we saw, and it just didn't seem real at the time. But the world does keep ticking on. The football world keeps ticking on. How are you feeling? Like eight days on from it?
I think you're still in a situation where you know, the family always remains the thing that's at the forefront of your mind. I think that there's the football world point is something which, you know, I've noticed more and more Liverpool supporters and the people I speak to in general, WhatsApp groups I'm in, so on and so forth. Like, people are noting what other clubs are up to, and I think it's, let's be clear about this. I thought that the full outpouring from the football world, not just the people who will have played or worked with Diogo or Andre, I thought that the outpouring from the football world in a broad sense was unbelievably positive and actually quite heartwarming. Firstly, because of what it said about him and Andre, but also what it sort of said about the football world, that, you know, everyone's got these connections and bonds that at times maybe us as supporters we don't even know. You know, I was especially touched by Richarlison's tribute, for instance, which came early but felt genuinely, you know, felt like it was really weighty and heartfelt from him. So it's worth saying that and being clear about that. But then the next sort of phase of that is the reality that football clubs, first and foremost, football clubs are playing games. There's the Women's Euros going on, the Club World Cup's going on, and then you've also just got the reality of the fact that clubs are going to continue to do business because this is their window to do so. So, you know, I think that what's so hard, and must be so hard for everyone who works at Liverpool at the moment, at any level, but there will be people who are impacted in terms of their workflow at this time in different ways. It is having to get back to the pace of the reality of the football world. You know, I think we've all gone through, or most of us will have gone through at some point in our lives, and if you haven't yet, then I very much, you know, I'm envious of that. But everyone's gone through the sort of solar plexus event and gone, fuck, I wish the world would stop.
Yeah.
But what we've all also therefore had is the reality that it just doesn't, and that I think is now where the club finds itself, where we find ourselves, with Sunday on the horizon, then there's a tour on the horizon, you know, then there's a Community Shield, there's a game there's the double game against Bilbao at Anfield, yep. The Community Shield, and then the first league game, and all of these things are happening. You know, time might feel like it's moving differently, but time just still moves inexorably forward towards these commitments that Liverpool have, which they could have cancelled the game against Preston. They've chosen not to. I think everyone would have understood. The tour would have been harder in that more would have been done, but I think even then people would have understood. But the truth of it is, part of what all of this is about is getting them ready to play the Community Shield against Crystal Palace and the first game of the season against Bournemouth. So this is where we are, and this is where we find ourselves, and we can't, you know, it's irresistible, if you see what I mean. It's irresistible that events go in this direction. So trying to resist it, unless you are someone who is so directly closely affected like the family, trying to resist it is futile.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, especially for you guys at Anfield Wrap. It's how long what's the right amount of time to move on. It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah,
but I think it's listen, you know, we're just doing podcasts about football, and the thing I always come back to is that, you know, what we do should be adding to people's lives in every single way, and if I felt what we were doing was detrimental to people's lives, then we just get to stop doing it. We get to decide, we get to choose. So, you know, we're looking at the game on Sunday and sort of going back to relative normality from Monday. We're going to do some transfer stuff on Monday. I'll be hosting that. Rob's away at the minute. He'll be doing a Zoom one later in the week. But I think we need to move back towards that, because I think, you know, for instance, it is reasonable to surmise, no matter what Liverpool are doing or saying, Luis Diaz is an object of affection from Bayern Munich at the moment. So Liverpool, even if their response is just to simply say, well, we're not answering the phone, that's still a response. So I think what you know, this stuff is ongoing. Some people want to hear about it, and if some people don't, that's absolutely fine. And all we can do is say to the some people who don't, well, all right, that's fine. You can choose, you opt in or you opt out, and you know, but we'll be doing what we do when you need us. When you're ready to opt back in, here we are. You know, I don't want people to opt out permanently, but the feeling that people can feel like I can opt back in, you know, when it suits me. Yeah. And that's all you can do, and respect those choices and respect that people make those decisions. And I think the way everyone gets through all of this is just in every single way, no matter whether in our tiny corner of the world or alternatively the Virgil van Dijk, in a way, is to remember whose corner of the world is absolutely enormous, is to remember that the best way to sort of go about this, which I'm sure Virgil absolutely would, is just through a process of mutual respect and understanding that everyone's just trying to act in good faith.
Yeah, definitely. And just speaking about the Anfield Wrap, just briefly, like for me, I got the chance to jump on the contributors' first episode
on Monday, yeah.
Which was still felt really raw, and it was difficult to speak about it, especially like me, you, and Keo and Phil were in there, and it was like tears in your eyes at that like moment where you're trying to like formulate sentences and it just doesn't feel right and stuff like that. But I think, without like just like pinning this on you a little bit, like, or changing like the subject from Diogo is the main focus, is like I've really enjoyed like the way the Anfield Wrap have like kind of went about it and stuff like that, and I think again, like you said as well, like it's you're putting stuff out with the opportunity of like, well, you don't have to listen to this, but you can if you want to, and it's that kind of like do as you please in a way, whatever feels right to you.
Yeah, no, I think you've got to trust people, and that's if people are being, and people are, and thank you very much if you're one of them, by the way. I don't want to seem like I'm you know, dismissing this, but you know, for me, you've just got to be authentic and trust the people, whatever counts as the people in this instance, and trust that people take things in good faith. Yeah. And there's nothing else to do, and if, you know, by doing that and you're able to have a level of sort of emotional clarity, and people respond to it really positively, and that's why we wanted to invite as many contributors as possible in, do the voice notes at the end, just allow people to have any opportunity, if they felt as though they had something they wanted to say and offer, to be able to put it out there, because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, all we are is a platform through which a number of disparate people who have this one thing in common, which is loving this football club, get to put their voice out there. And then maybe at times through, despite being disparate, we get to all see all the ways in which we've got similarities and common humanity. But, you know, for me, it is this, and as I say, people have been really kind, and I'm very pleased that they have. I'd much rather that than the opposite. But ultimately, what we've chosen to do, and the way in which we've chosen to do it isn't to get people to say nice things. It's just because we want to offer both the contributors the opportunity to be their authentic, open, honest selves, and for people to be able to listen to that and hear it, and hear this is some people, either person or people, who feel as I do, and this voice gives me comfort in this context. I don't feel like I'm alone. I don't feel I'm at the end of a piece of string going a bit mad because I feel all this about this, but no one else I know does. Or even for people who are surrounded by people who do feel like that anyway, being able to sort of to pick things out and find things within there. So yeah, it's great when people say nice things, it really is, and I don't want to, as I say, I don't want to seem as though I'm being in any way, shape or form dismissive of that. I'm not. But listen, I like it when people say nice things about a brilliant podcast after Liverpool win the league that I'm unbelievably proud of. That was done for, rather than just trying to, you know, trying to allow everyone to sort of showcase humanity and showcase, you know, and find a way to understand how they feel. So everyone's been lovely, so thank you very much. But all we can all just do is our best, and that's what we've done. I'd rather be always doing my best and having people say lovely positive things about wonderful positive things. So let's hopefully in the fullness of time get back to that point. And if everyone wants to say the post-match show after Liverpool beat Arsenal and have won the first 3 games of the season is absolutely brilliant, then fill your boots.
Exactly. And just link on to that before we get into the Preston stuff is, I mentioned like I've enjoyed how like you've gone about it, and you just explained it quite nicely there. But how do you personally find being not the focal point, but one of the people that like these people come and ask to, we want you to be the voice of Liverpool fans? How do you find that?
You've got to sort of choose. So you've got to work out whether or not you think in these contexts, whether or not you think the programme is being done in good faith. And we chose to do nothing on the Thursday, the actual day. We all, you know, I think John ended something on 5 Live. It was via Grace. So I understand completely why, but apart from that, everything else we just went, we're not going to do anything, because for me it felt too close, and it felt like, well, what precisely are you going to offer about this distinct, specific domestic tragedy, you know, a family tragedy? It becomes a different thing than in the fullness of time, and you've just sort of got to work out whether or not, on the whole, the people who want you to do something, as I say, whether or not it's going to be a good faith thing. But also remember that a lot of the same media outlets ask me to do something when things are good. You know, I do CNN. I did CNN as a good example. You know, we beat Man United 7-0, and I'd only done CNN a couple of times, and they were going to have me on live. But I'd said all the way through, when they'd asked, I said, I will have had a pint. And then I got an email from someone at CNN after as I came out of Anfield, you haven't got any signal, and you check your phone and your phone's lighting up, and it's all about, and one was from CNN. And it was one of the guys at CNN said, well, this will be a social experiment.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you know, when CNN asked me to do something after the tragic events, you say yes, because you've got to know them, and you know that they're not going to, you know, mess you around and ask you a question that you're going to find a bit inappropriate or anything like that. Yeah. And so that becomes part of it. And in terms of like feeling personal pressure, if that's the thing, again, I just think you've genuinely just got to find a way to be yourself. And I'm fortunate in that I get nervous before things. I don't want people to think I don't, but like I've got to the point now, I haven't done as much of this as I have in a number of different forms, talking into microphones now for so long, that I'm able to sort of put the nerves to one side and feel as though I can be myself. If, you know, I was to go on a national broadcast and say something awful or something which a huge number of Liverpool supporters didn't like, well, they let me know about it. And that's also really important. Like, you know, I walk across the city, I say hello to people a lot of the time. It's nice to see people come in here, say hello to someone downstairs, see you. You know, if I'm in some way, shape or form doing stuff, I'm being a bell end, frankly, but someone's going to fucking tell me. Yeah. So, you know, I think just remembering everything has to make sense in terms of, you know, going to away ends and understanding that you're only, you know, people get you on to talk about things because you support Liverpool. I could be as good at, if people think I am good, but as good at talking into microphones and support Doncaster. No one would care. Yeah. No one would care. Yeah. So, you know, you've got to have that sort of humility around all of this. Just try your best. And as I say, trust that if you're going to cock up, someone's going to tell you. And then if you're going to continually cock up, you're going to be emphatically told. And I'm all right with that. You know, I am all right with that, and I'm all right with the idea of that. And I feel like I've talked about myself and us for ages, and I don't like to do that really, but I feel like the other thing that I genuinely do feel like, and this is back to why it is good to get the messages that people have sent about what we put out, etc., etc. I do genuinely feel as though we are supported. And that's good. Yeah. And as I say, if that began to dry up for any reason, then I'd be, you know, as much as I've just said, well, I'd rather have it, but you take my point, I'd be aware, okay, well, because I think feeling as though people do trust that when you are going to get in front of a microphone, you are going to be at least a version of what people want to see out in the world. Whilst people trust that, then it's worth doing. If people stopped trusting that for whatever reason, then you'd just stop doing it, because I'd be mortified. I wouldn't be able to sleep nights. So yeah, just wanting to sort of be truthful, authentic, myself on the one hand, but also knowing on the other hand that, you know, people do support, and also if people felt as though, you know, they'll take everything you say in good faith. If you misspeak for a second, people give you the benefit of the doubt, because I do believe our wide community, and by that I mean the worldwide community of Liverpool supporters, is predominantly a good thing, and it's a thing that gives people the benefit of the doubt if they've shown that they earn it and they've deserved it in the past, you know. And I think you just got to trust that, and then at times, and there are days, trust me, you do it and you feel a little bit like you are jumping out of a window to land on a skip. And the skip might be full of nice soft bin bags, like in a daft film and an action movie where someone jumps out, and it might be full of nice soft bin bags, or it might not be. But you've just got to sort of do it and hope for the best. So yeah, I don't like to sort of talk. Like you've done well here, Mick. I often don't talk about myself at all. Normally I'd say no. I don't do that sort of thing.
You teased it out to you.
You teased it out to me. Yeah, I don't do that sort of thing. Is normally my thing. But no, that's very wordy. I've talked a lot because I am actually ironically more nervous talking about myself than anything else. That's just the only way to do it.
Well, let's talk about Preston a little bit then, because Liverpool are playing a game of footy on Sunday. There was a bit of maybe hesitancy about whether that was going to go ahead, but it has been confirmed, and yeah, so there's going to be a number of things going ahead. So it's 3 p.m, it's going to be on ITV, it's going to be on LFC TV stream globally. There's going to be a rendition of You Never Walk Alone before kick-off. There's going to be a wreath laid alongside the away supporters. There's going to be a minute's silence. There's going to be black armbands. So all the appropriate things that you expect, like you said, you trust. We're at a point where it's not like it's maybe 20 years ago where you're at a point where they're hiring people you don't trust and whatever. I'm at a point personally, I can say that I trust the club completely. Whatever they do, then it's the right thing for me, and it will come across. So
yeah, I'm sure that Preston as well just want it to be the best version. It's worth remembering Preston have got the Bill Shankly Cup.
Oh no, of course, yeah.
As part of this, maybe some listeners might not know, but they've got the Bill Shankly Cup, and Preston again. Some people wherever they live, they're not that far away. There'll be a lot of people who, for instance, might support Preston but want to see Liverpool do well, or might support Liverpool but want to see Preston do well. There's going to be that crossover there. So this night I think it'll be very, very, all very, tastefully done. There's a special programme that's being printed as well. Liverpool, I think if they didn't feel comfortable playing the game, they would know enough to know that they could have just not played the game. Yeah. And I think that's important, but I think it's true. So I'm quite, I think it will be a remarkably emotional, sad occasion in a couple of ways, but Liverpool will be playing the game for a reason. Whether or not that reason pertains to somewhere a number of those players just want to get the first game out of the way, whether or not that reason pertains to the manager thinks it's going to be very useful in terms of working on bits and pieces, whether or not it's a teeny bit of box a teeny bit we've just got to go with it. And then that it's on ITV1 feels just a little prurient, to be honest. Feels just putting the right word, just feels just a teeny little bit mawkish. It was meant to be on ITVX and now they moved it onto ITV1. But all of that said, again, if we presume the best faith scenario, part of it might be on ITV1 is we've seen a national outpouring of people being, genuinely moved and upset. So are ITV doing the wrong thing by virtue of giving those people who might live wherever but might not want to sign up to might want to sign up to LFC TV or whatever, giving them the best opportunity to see? Is that wrong? I don't want to just sort of sit here and say it is. And again, if you're going to say in the instances you want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, then maybe the benefit of the doubt for ITV in this instance is just simply they're thinking to themselves, well, this thing has clearly meant a lot to a lot of people across the country. We'll give them the opportunity to see, to both bear witness to those respects being paid, but maybe then also be able to commune and work through it in their own sense. So if we see the best version, that's the best version, and I think we all will be best served by just seeing the best version for a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, like I said, a very sombre occasion, but I think it's, again, get the first. I think it's like little steps forward at this stage where you've got to make them at some stage, and probably the sooner you do it, the better, really, in terms of I don't know, just being in a better place, physically, mentally, seasons getting closer. It's like you said before, the football world doesn't stop, so you've got to keep rolling with the punches, as it were. But before we get on to, I do want to talk about Bournemouth a little bit before we finish. But I just thought we'd talk a little bit about other clubs for a bit. So there's been quite a bit, like we said, the football world doesn't stop. Madueke looks like he's going to Arsenal. There's Gibbs White, that looks like it might have been blocked and then it might be unblocked, and there's all this stuff. So there's quite a few bits floating around. I've just been reading on BBC there, people no #NoToMadueke trending on Twitter, which is it's all a bit mad.
I think the funny thing on this is it's this idea of whether or not Arsenal and Chelsea is a rivalry. Yeah. Which I think is a big part of why there's the reaction and this sort of feeling from an Arsenal supporter's point of view. They're dealing with the Chelsea cast-off. But there's a bit of an issue, which is that if everyone just decided to stop dealing with Chelsea cast-offs, there's 35 professional footballers who'll never kick a ball. I think Madueke could be a really good signing for Arsenal. I think he's good. I don't think he necessarily makes a ton of sense covering Saka because
that's the problem.
But he can play on left hand side. He's played both sides, and I think he could be a good player. I'm not saying he's a great player, but I think he could be a good player. He might be a good player who could improve with some good coaching. I still don't think it solves you know, the overwhelming Arsenal problem, and I think a lot of their business doesn't, from the outside, make a ton of sense. Now, it might be that you get 3 games into pre-season, you look at everything he's doing and you go, oh yeah, that does make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But you know, I remain to be, you know, it remains to be seen. But you know, literally buying a footballer, I don't think, you know, is that footballer is you know, some sort of ridiculous thing. I think Spurs look like they're doing some quite interesting little bits. I think it's important they stop. I'm of the view less is more for Tottenham this summer. They've already got a very big squad anyway. Yeah. So unless they know that they're going to be moving a lot on, and that's still to come, I think that a season where maybe Frank is able to manage expectations and manage money would be no bad thing. So if I was him, I wouldn't be desperate to do any more. If they do Gibbs White and they do your man, then I would just sort of be stopping there, Kudus, and saying, all right, well, we've got Solanke. Unless Son's going to go, we've still got Son and he's club captain. Yeah. You know, you've got Kulusevski and Maddison, who both play best suited behind the front. You've got Bentancur, Basuma, Sarr, Bergvall, Archie Gray. Archie Gray is one of those footballers who gets his full name. Who are suited there. Yeah. They bought Matthias Tell. Also plays in wide areas, as Kudus and Gibbs White may well do for them. They've got Brennan Johnson. You know, you suddenly go, fucking hell, that's a squad. Now, you might say it's not that good a squad, but if you're going to sack the previous manager because you think he's underperformed, you sack him because you think he's underperformed with these players. Yeah. So maybe, you know, I'm not saying do literally what Slot did last summer, but or what Jurgen did when he first arrived. But there's a lot to be said, I think, for a manager coming in and saying, I'll just predominantly work with the lads who are already here, maybe move a couple on and go from there. So. And I think that Tottenham could do all right this year. I think it'll be difficult for them with the Champions League at the same time, but they had 2 games a week last season. And you're just sort of looking around going, okay, well, that's quite interesting, they're doing that, that's quite interesting, they're doing that. You know, I think that there's a couple of other sides, I think, who are doing bits and pieces of business. And A, it is a reminder that everything goes on, but also B, you know, we've got to compete with these sides, and we did more than compete with them last season. We beat them. Yeah. We beat them. So there's no reason why we can't beat them all again. But we do need to be aware that it's on the horizon. And if we're, you know, we're taking it deadly seriously, which we should be, we're absolutely 100% all in. We're going for it, which is what, you know, I hope we are feeling able to do, despite it all, or will be feeling able to do despite it all by the time we get to that first game. Then, you know, we need to make sure we're putting our best foot forward, because all of these sides, they've all got something to prove. They all want what we've got, which is to be league champions. It sounds like a cliche. It is a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially like Brentford, I think it's a bit of a weird one because they've lost Frank.
Captain and manager?
Yeah, Visser looks like he's going, and Buemo, Norgard, and Keller's gone there, and I'm like, I just feel like a little bit like he's gone with the premise of them being a very good, well-run side, and everyone's just fucked off.
So this is the dead interesting sort of, do you trust the club? Do you trust the club or not? Because they've made these decisions, the people who run Brentford. I mean, listen, they couldn't have stopped Frank from going. I think that's probably worth saying. But everything else that they're doing it, you know, and they've been really well run for an extended period of time. So it's a question of the model versus the men.
Yeah.
You know, will the model still work? It's important to say Keith Andrews was set-piece coach, but he's done some assistant coach work elsewhere. But that's not really the CV of a usual Premier League manager, but then Brentford aren't a usual Premier League club. So it might be that it works perfectly for them. I'm a little sceptical. I think there's a few things they're gambling on. They spent a lot of money last summer on either Igor Thiago or Thiago Igor, I can't remember which way around it is. And then he got injured in pre-season, and he was just in and out at the very back end of last season. Kevin Schade finishes last season like an absolute train playing for them, looks great. So if they're going to do something around, you know, it's also worth saying with Wisser he is 28. I think everyone thought Mbeumo would go this summer. Yeah. So if they are going to take a chance, they could decide that this is a good chance to take it. They've got a few players returning from injury as well. Aaron Hickey, Rico Henry, Ethan Pinnock doesn't play that much last season, although whether or not he'll be first choice, I wonder if Vandenberg's got past him now. But I'd be worried if I supported Brentford. But the flip side of it is, what's brought you to the party massively has been Thomas Frank, but it's also been the overall model, the overall approach, all the database stuff, the Scandinavian learning, all of that. if they think it's right, then maybe they're right, but also maybe there are like 3 or 4, because for instance I thought Damsgaard was great last season.
Yeah, very good.
But he hadn't been great the season before. You know, it might be that Keane Lewis Potter's about to go up a notch and we just don't know, but they do. You know, and you can do that with the clubs all the way down the league. That's why it's, you know, it is an interesting league. We've talked loads about the quality of this league, but there's a number of clubs where it's easy to imagine how they can get sort of 10-15 points more next season, but it's also easy to imagine that things don't work for them, and then what does it look like? And Brentford at the minute, it is actually quite hard to imagine how they get 10 or 15 points more. It's easy to imagine that this could go wrong, but if it just goes right, if they have as good a season this season as they did last season, what's everyone's going to say then? You're going to have to say, well, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
If they pull it out the bag, they know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you don't even know. It's only you know in hindsight, don't you? Which is the thing. So we can have all our judgments now, but if they end up being top 10, top 8, whatever, then we'll be sat here saying absolutely well done. I just want to finish up on Bournemouth a little bit just before we finish up, because it's 5 weeks today.
Wow.
Till we kick off at Anfield against Bournemouth and the opening day of the season. Yeah, Kirkes against his old club, all that stuff is going to be a part of it, but I think I don't know if it feels a bit too, I don't know, does it feel far away? I mean, I'm on holiday now for 2 weeks, so I'm going to be in France for 2 weeks. So when I get back, there's 3 weeks left.
3 weeks.
So I've planned my life. That's like there's France and then there's 3 weeks. That's the way I've done it. But yeah, it still feels like obviously there's Preston, and like you mentioned, there's the tour. There's all those bits in between where we'll start to see Wirtz, we'll start to see Kirkes, we'll start to see Frimpong, and we'll start painting a picture about what Slot's going to do with these players come Bournemouth first game of the season.
So I'm hoping that sort of Sunday becomes a bit of a line.
I think it'll be
becomes a bit of a line where you're able to sort of go, okay, now we're into this next thing, and that's the way in which it's going to work. I'm quite still, thinking we've got to get past that. I think though Bournemouth will be listen, the manager comes in last season and he takes a football club which is anyway tuned to be emotional, that had just gone through something really emotional with the departure of the previous manager, and now the manager's in, and he showed an ability to do that, massive ability to do that, but now he's caught up himself in his own emotional thing with this group of young men in these really tragic circumstances. And I think that will just take a bit of managing, frankly, a bit of sort of looking after. I'm not of the view it's impossible, and I'm also of the view that that's also a process. The first game of the season anyway is always a bit on top. The first game of the season when you're champions, it's worth saying Liverpool have now not played, do all the stuff, a first game of the season when they're champions since 1990 in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
We haven't had that in front of a crowd. So what's Anfield like on that day? Well, we've literally not known. It's 35 years.
Yeah.
So he'd have had to deal with that anyway, but now with everything else that's added in, I feel as though what he did brilliantly last season was, I think he managed to very much have that emotion within us when we needed it. I think at the start of this season, he may need to accept the first 3 games are going to be hugely emotional affairs.
Yeah, definitely.
But then by September, it's then they go on the September international break and it becomes something different again. Maybe when they come back, that's when it becomes more, in inverted commas, normal, when you can begin to sort of move through and run a normalish football club. I think for the first 3 games of the season, the job, if you're on a slot, is harnessing emotion. It's not necessarily controlling it. It might be uncontrollable. He'll have a much better sense of that than me. Those players will have a better sense of that than we will, but I feel as though that might be they have to walk out and play the first league game of the season at Anfield. They have to. It's the first game of the season, it's on telly, it'll be hugely emotional for a lot of the people who are in that crowd, and they'll have to all be able to prosper within that environment, because the last thing they want is to go through all the emotion and then have 0 points.
Exactly.
That's the job. That's what they're going to have to work out how to do, and I'm optimistic they will. I think that the manager showed last season his ability to do all of that. I think Sunday is a thing that will sit on its own, and then it becomes part of a staging post to the thing that happens next, and then the thing that happens next is a staging post, and then you just it's almost like when you play a computer game and if you get past a certain point, the next time that you make a mess of the game, it starts you back there over and over again. Checkpoints. It's almost like a series of checkpoints that I think they're going to have to get through, and I think they end probably Arsenal. I think they're all their own checkpoints all the way through, and then they get to Arsenal, and then I think it becomes it hopefully for them becomes able to be more like a normal Premier League season. But I think until they get to Arsenal, that'll be the case. The thing is, I just trust completely that the manager will make the best possible fist of it, because everything we've seen from him so far, he's been a credit to this football club in ways we couldn't even have imagined. So fair play to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, we'll leave it there. Nice one to Neil for jumping on. Nice one everyone for watching or listening. That's been episode 26 of Pod and a Pint. We will be back. Like I said, I'm off in France, not to I'm off to France, so I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
French Mick, they call him.
But yeah, nice one to Neil. Nice one for everyone watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Ta-ra.